Hi, it's Marisol, your rebel guide to living a life of freedom abroad, bringing you an episode of Roaming the Now, where entrepreneurs, coaches, and mentors come together to give you a behind the scenes look at the real and raw experience of setting out to a new country and building a life and business abroad. Make sure to like and subscribe to Roaming the Now. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roaming the Now. Today I have Patricia Brooks joining us from Soray in France. And today we're going to be talking about something really interesting about mentally preparing for moving abroad alone. Before we jump into that, though, I would love to give Patricia the opportunity to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I am Patricia Brooks, speaker, author, and expat coach living in the south of France. And I help single women who want to move abroad but have fears, doubts, uncertainties about making that happen. I help them move through that and make the move, find the confidence to make that move on their own so that they can experience the kind of life they want. And I absolutely love working with women on this topic because it's what I did. And I doubted my ability to do that. And it feels so good to have done it. And I want other women to experience what I feel. When I am not coaching and working, I love to learn languages. I'm currently learning Spanish. I've gotten to a level of fluency in French, and now I'm learning Spanish. And I love to take road trips in Spain and in France. And Spain is really close.
Yes, I would say about 20 minutes from Spain, where you are, which I was
Yes,
like,
20 minutes. Yes.
when you dropped it in the chat, I was like, oh wow, I'm sure it's super duper beautiful where you're situated and located. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like before you prepared to make the move? Since I know that you are from the US, but like, where were you living? What were you doing? What was kind of like that aha moment? Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yes, I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and I'd been a project manager for many companies. And that work in the beginning was something I loved to do because I love organizing. But it got to be something I didn't feel I was appreciated for. And so after my mother died, I decided I was going to go solo traveling because before I would go, when I had vacation time, I would go visit my mom in New Jersey. And that wasn't an option anymore. And I remember going to Quebec City, Canada when I was a child. And I remember that being so quaint. And so I decided that was going to be the first place I solo traveled. And I remember they spoke French there. And so I said, oh, it's time to dust off my high school and university French. And so after 6 weeks of taking this Pimsleur method program, I got on a plane and went to Quebec City, Canada. And that was where I got the idea of living in a French speaking country. Decided against Canada just because of the weather in winter and decided to check out France. And so that's how I decided. I think it was a process, but that was kind of the moment when I started to think, oh, maybe I could live someplace else.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So the seed was planted in Quebec.
Yes.
Awesome. That's it sounds like it really was like a journey in terms of this like process and how everything kind of came to be. So we're thinking around that and like, okay, seeds planted, went to Quebec. I want to live in a French speaking country. France was decided, it sounds like. Um, what did that process like look like? Because as you shared when you were introducing yourself, there was this doubt of can I really do this? So what did this process look like in actually preparing to overcome the self-doubt and really make that move to France?
Mhm. So it was really just a dream initially. I went to Quebec a couple of times before I said, yeah, I think living in a French speaking country is the thing for me. And the reason for that was because I think French is such a beautiful language and I wanted to sound like the French sound. So that was a real drive for me. But the process was really going from that dream stage of, oh yeah, one day I'm going to be living in a French speaking country to that, oh yeah, this is happening, and I'm taking steps and taking action to actually make it happen. So for me, the process was, and I guess it was about a 2.5, 3 year process to get from the dream stage to, well, again, maybe it was a two year process to get from the dream stage to the, oh yeah, this is not a dream anymore. I've decided, and I need help to move through my fear and self doubt. And so that's what I did. I got sick and tired of being of just having the dream and not really believing that it was possible for me. So in January of 2017 was when I hired a coach to help me get unstuck. And the first thing that she asked me was, well, what would it take financially? Because for me, it was, well, how am I going to be able to support myself? I'd been in a management career for 20 years, and I was over that. Really didn't want to actually do that thing in France. And she said, well, how much money would you need to show the French government that you have the means to support yourself for a year? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, that's your homework. That's your assignment for next time. Find out what that is. And I hadn't looked because I had this dream that felt so good. It helped me help lift my spirits when I was going into this job that I didn't want to do anymore. And if I looked into how much it would cost and I didn't have that, then my hopes would be dashed. Well, it would have been a temporary thing, but in my mind, I thought, no, if I didn't have it then, I'd never have it and I'd never be able to do it. I looked into it and I thought, oh, I've got more than enough for, 2 years, maybe 3 years. And that was when I could take my foot off the brake and put it on the gas.
So interesting you say that. I have a mentor who always tells me fear is the gas pedal, not the brake. Uh,
Ah,
so interesting that you use that analogy. And I think that's really true, right? Is the minute we actually start looking into things and seeing how feasible this is, it's actually that's I feel like when it starts switching from it's not really a dream anymore, like this can actually be reality. Because once you start to get those logistics in order, um, everything starts to make sense. I went through a similar thing. I mean, my move to Mexico happened quite rapidly, but I did a lot of research just kind of understanding what is the average cost of living on a month to month basis, right? I did do some research into like temporary residency. However, I then discovered my father was born here. Super easy to get citizenship. So I did not have to go through the visa process. um, but I still did those similar things of just to kind of ease the fear or maybe just like the uncertainty. Like, okay, financially, what runway do I have based on the average cost of living? Because I feel like that is a really big thing around moving abroad since you don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. You don't know, and you don't want to get there and then have to return home because, oh, the money ran out.
Yes, I've met a lot of travelers or nomads who do end up doing that, right? Because there's not a lot of planning that goes into place. And so it's kind of like, yay, let's go, but then it's not as sustainable. And so for me, I was always in this, I don't know, I like to do things for the long term. If I'm committing, I'm committing.
Mhm.
So I I've shared this a little bit, but I did have a bit of a nest egg, like a financial runway that I still have because I was like, yeah, I don't want to like go and then like run out of money and then have to return home because I know that that's just going to, I don't know, that was just not something that I wanted to experience. So I really looked at everything quite analytically, financial planning wise to make sure like that was not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I came on a visitor visa, which meant that I couldn't work. And that was fine because I was ready to take this sabbatical. I was ready to not work. I was ready to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do next. And that was perfect. But 2.5 years in to living on this visitor visa, I thought, oh yeah, your savings is not going to last forever. And so you got to figure this thing out. And having gone to IPEC and being trained as a coach, I I enjoy coaching, and now I had this new niche. I could help single women make this move abroad, just like I did, and so that's how that all came about.
Yes, embodying the niche. It's always what I say to people. When you can embody your niche, it's like kind of a piece of cake. You're walking
Yes.
the talk. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your program and what you like walk people through, like in terms of your process.
Yeah. So my program is called the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, and it has a big component of mindset and then a portion of organization and planning. So I help in the first module, we talk about what's your why. Why are you going to turn your life upside down so completely? Because that's what a move abroad does to get to this country that you've been dreaming of. And a lot of times people can't really express that. But I think it's important for that to be in the front of their minds because as they plan and prepare to make this move abroad, and as they face challenges in doing that, to have this, oh, and the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to experience a more expansive life, where I could be my authentic self or whatever that why is. That helps them to move through those issues more easily. So that's a component of it. Another component in module 2 is about who do you need to become to see yourself as the kind of person who leaves their country and moves to a foreign one, because we do different things based on our self identity. If we don't see ourselves living in a foreign country as that kind of person, then, well, maybe we're not going to clean out our attic, or maybe we're not going to be consistent in learning a foreign language, or whatever those things that you need to do are in order to get there. But when you have that shift of, oh no, I am the kind of person who does that, and you start saying, stop saying if and start saying when I move abroad, then your foot's on the gas again, right? And then that third module is all about, well, what are the things that you need to plan for in your country you're leaving, what to take care of in the country you're leaving, and what are the things you need to take care of in the country you're moving toward, and organizing and making sure that there is accountability with that. And that's all the curriculum. And then there are the group coaching and mentoring calls where they get on a call and work through all of that with me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love the emphasis on the mindset work because I really feel like that's the biggest obstacle, right? That's the biggest
Yes.
obstacle sometimes when it comes to making any big change. And it reminds me of the golden rule. So the golden rule is you can have the thing that you want, anything that you want, but are you willing to do the work for it? If you're willing to do the work for it, you can have it. However, that's always like I always have this conversation with people either when we're talking about career coaching, if we're talking about, things that they want like to move abroad, life coaching. You can have the thing that you desire, right? You can have it. However, are you willing to do the work required to get there? Are you willing to stay the course? Because it is an
Yes.
adventure, especially if you're building a life abroad.
Yes, yes. And so that's a component as well in my program of the congruence triangle, is what I call it, right? So there are three sides to this triangle. That how committed to making this move abroad are you? On a scale of 1 to 10. That second line on or side of that triangle is what's your self confidence or self belief level, right? And then that third side of the triangle has to do with worth. How worthy do you believe you are of moving abroad? And so if any of those sides is not at a 9 or a 10, then you're going to struggle, or it's going to be more difficult to achieve what you're going for. And so as you talk about willingness, that's all that commitment side of the triangle.
Yeah, it reminds me of, right, because moving abroad, you're doing something different. And I feel like the three obstacles that everyone faces, no matter what you're doing different, is the first one is the opinions of others. And then the second one is yourself. That's the biggest obstacle. And then the third, kind of challenge obstacle is the integration piece. But I feel like that congruent triangle is really going to show up for you in that second part of the challenge that you're facing right now is yourself. And so
Mhm.
to make sure it's a little smoother, because it doesn't ever really completely go away, making sure there's balance and commitment and belief that you can achieve that is like key to really
Yeah.
executing, because most people get caught up either in opinions of others or in their inner self, inner world. I call it like self-sabotage. It's you start to spiral. You're the one who starts doubting you. And then that's what is going to be the most powerful like deviator.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the beauty of my program is that it's other like-minded women who want to make this move abroad. So while your circle, in your community or at home may be naysayers who don't understand, why would you want to leave, right? You've got this community of like-minded women who are doing the same thing and who you can get on a call and be vulnerable and who are there encouraging you and supporting you and helping you to keep your self a belief up.
Yeah, definitely. It's very supportive to be in an environment where people are doing what you're doing and, they're facing the same obstacles or the same things. And just knowing that there are other people doing what you're doing is really, really helpful, even just as an entrepreneur, as an expat.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? You're not alone, right?
I think that's the biggest piece. Okay. So before we close out, I would love for you to kind of just give, some insight or like a piece of advice to that single woman who is teetering. She's teetering between, yes, I'm going to move. No, I'm not going to move. What would some advice be for that individual?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I always like to turn to is the idea of regret, right? If you don't take this step and make a move abroad, will you have regrets at the end of your life of what you could have done or should have done? And if you feel like that will be the case, then it's time to make a decision. And I think deciding is the next step because as I spoke about before, I was in the dreaming phase for 2 years. This idea was there, but it wasn't until I decided that I was going to do this thing that things started to happen for me. So that regret question, if you don't do this, will you have regrets? And will you be able to to live with those regrets? And then if the answer is no, I won't be able to live with those regrets, then make the decision that you are going to make a move abroad, try it out, right? Because maybe it's not for you, but if you don't try it, you will never know.
Yep. No regrets. Is
No,
that what
no
they say? No
regrets.
regrets.
No regrets. Trevor Noah, and I don't even have the quote, but he said something about regret that really spoke to me, and it has to do with the idea that if you have regret, if you don't try the thing and you have regret, you don't have an answer. But if you attempt the thing, right, and even if maybe you're not successful or maybe it's not a long-term thing, maybe you go for a year and say, yeah, I've tried it and I'm glad I did, but this isn't for me, and you go back, at least you have an answer. But that regret is this perpetual question.
Yeah. Because if you don't try, then you don't know, and then you're gonna spend the rest of your life knowing is how I've always kind of viewed things. But if you
Mhm.
try, then you know, and then I always kind of think of it as just like you collect more pieces of what works for you, but doesn't work for you, and that's super duper valuable.
It's satisfying too. I mean, maybe not in the moment where you're feeling like, oh, well, this didn't work out, but in hindsight, you look back and say, oh yeah, I grew in that experience, or I learned this about myself. As you're saying, you're collecting pieces about who you are, what you like, what you don't like.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you for that powerful note of ending. That's definitely something to ponder. Now I'm pondering a little bit of a little bit about just how that might be interpreted or even just how I interpret it. So thank you for that. And on that note, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming and sharing. If anyone wants to get in contact with you or discover more about your work, what is the best way?
Well, I want to thank you for having me on this podcast. I really appreciate it. The best way to contact me is on Instagram or on Facebook. I'm at The Courage Catalyst. And I also do have a YouTube channel, and that is Patricia Brooks, Carefree Expat.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll make sure to link your links in the description along with your bio. So, with that being said, thank you again, Patricia. And to anyone who's listening, thanks for listening. And I hope that you are enjoying wherever you are in the world, wherever you are. Until next time, this is your host, Marisol, signing off. Thanks for catching this episode of Roaming the Now. If you have not already, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, wherever you are in the world, I hope you are enjoying Roaming the Now.